Hey everybody, how are you doing? I hope you had a great Easter. I surely did. I got to spend some good time with my family, and McKinley had her first Easter, and so that was a very special memory for me. And we took pictures, and so I'll be definitely treasuring those forever. Um, I have not done a Hank story since I guess it was maybe Thursday. So I did another Easter story, and I wound up doing it like and posting it on Easter Sunday. So we're a couple of days, or maybe like about a day off on the Hank. So I may go ahead and try to do 2 chapters tonight. Just depends on our time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And we left off on chapter 5, which was another bloody murder. And like I told you before, this is probably going to be my new location where I read most of the time. Or if it's like, bad weather or something like that, I have to be indoors. I told you a little bit of history about this, but this was my old bedroom. And so, the way my house, we used to be my parents' house, okay? And so let me clarify. And I grew up here. I moved in here when we were 12, and then I moved out whenever I was 20, I think. And then I moved back like about 13 years ago. So anyway, this is there's no one that lives in this bedroom, and so it's kind of a quiet location, and it's a place where I can come and hang out and talk to you guys and have a little privacy. And I just have Juju and Sarah Jane in here with me right now. So anyway, back to the story. Okay, we're going to get started. So there was another bloody murder. Remember, we've had 2 hens murdered already. And let me see. Oh, the last chapter was when they went to town. Remember, they met Bruno the boxer. You will hear about Bruno in some of the other stories. Okay, a lot of the characters, and I mentioned this before, that they get introduced in this book are used in some of the other books, throughout the series. Not in every one. Okay, Hank and Drover, generally they're most in every one. Hank is, but. Anyway, like I said, Bruno was a boxer. He was the kind of dog that they met when they went to town, and we'll hear about him in some other books. All right, chapter 5, another bloody murder. When we crossed the cattle guard that put us back on the ranch, I felt a change come over me. In town, I had been just another happy-go-lucky dog without a care in the world. But back on the ranch, I felt that same crushing sense of responsibility that's known to people in high places, like your presidents and your prime ministers and your emperors and such. Being head of ranch security is great honor, but it's also a dreadful burden. I remember the chicken house murder. I still didn't have any suspects. Or I had too many suspects. Maybe that was it. Everyone was a suspect. Well, everybody but the milk cow. And I had pretty much scratched her off the list. And the porcupine. Well, since they only eat trees. But every other creature on the ranch was under the shadow of suspicion. Except Drover. He was too chicken to kill a chicken. When we got home, I trotted up to the chicken house. I went over the whole thing back in my mind. While I was sitting there, lost in thought, a chicken came up and pecked me on the tail. Scared the fool out of me just for a second. I snarled at her and made her squawk and flap her wings. That's another thing about this job. Every day and every night, you put your life on the line, and for what? A bunch of idiot birds that just as soon peck you on the tail as tell you good morning. Sometimes you wonder if it's worth it, and all that keeps you going is the dedication to duty. In the end, that's what separates the top echelon of cow dogs from the common rabble, well, whatever the word is. Anyway, the dogs that don't give a rip is what I'm saying. Well, I had nothing to work with, no evidence, and no case. There wasn't a thing I could do until the killer struck again. I could only hope that me and Drover could catch him in the act. I decided to change my strategy, and instead of throwing a guard around the chicken house, we would use the steakhouse approach. Stake out approach, not steakhouse. Maybe Miss Byrd, I have food on my mind or something. Maybe I'm wanting to leave and go to a steakhouse because we can't go to a restaurant right now. So sorry about the mistake. Stakeout is a technical word. I'll get it together in a second. Is a technical term which we use in this business. Webster defines stake is a length of wood or metal pointed at one end for driving into the ground. It comes from the Anglo-Saxon word stike, akin to the Danish stack. Out is defined as away from, forth from, or removed from a place, position, or situation. And it comes from the Middle East English word ut. Well, that's about as technical as I can make it. In layman's terms, a stakeout is basically a trap. Okay, so they're going to make a trap. You leave the chicken house unguarded, don't you see? And you watch and you wait and you wait and you watch until the villain makes his move, and then you swoop in and you get him. It's pretty simple, really, when you get used to the terminology. At dark, me and Drover staked the place out. We hid in some tall weeds, maybe 30 feet from the chicken house. Time sure did drag. First couple of hours, we heard some coyotes howling out in the pastures. Drover kept looking around with big eyes. I thought he might try to slip off to the machine shed, but he didn't. And after a while, he laid his head down on his paws and he went to sleep. I could have kept him awake, pulled rank and demanded that he stayed awake. But I thought, oh, what the heck? Little guy probably needed to sleep. I figured I could keep watch and wake him up when the time came for the action. Then I fell asleep. Well, the funny thing about it was that I dreamed I was awake, sitting here and standing guard. And I kept saying, Hank, are you still awake? And Hank said, sure I am. If I was asleep, I wouldn't be talking like this, would we? And I suppose not. Seems to me it's kind of a waste of good sleep to dream about what you're doing when you're awake. But that's exactly what happened. I heard something squawk, and I said, Hank, what's that? Nothing. You sure? Sure, I'm sure. You're wide awake and watching the stakeout, aren't you? I think so, yes. Then stop worrying. The squawking went on, and the next thing I knew, Drover was jumping up and down. Hank, oh, Hank, he's back. Murder, 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 help, blood. We fell asleep. Oh, my gosh, Hank, wake up, wake up. Huh? I ain't asleep. And right then, my eyes popped open, and I woke up. Dang the luck, I was asleep. I was afraid of that. So we dashed out of the weeds and found a body south of the chicken house door. The MO was the same. That's another technical term. The MO stands for modus of operationis, which means how it was done. We shorten it to MO. A pattern began to emerge. The killer had struck twice, and both times he had killed a white leghorn hen. Actually, that may not have been a crucial point because there aren't any other colored hens on the place. But I mention it to demonstrate the kind of deep thinking that goes into solving a case of this type. You don't overlook a single detail, even those that don't mean anything. But the most revealing clue was that the murderer hadn't dragged his victim off. That meant that he hadn't killed for food, but only for the sport of it. In other words, we had a pathological killer on the loose. This was very significant, the first big break in the case. At last, I had an MO that narrowed the suspects down to coyotes, coons, skunks, badgers, foxes, rats. It hadn't eliminated anybody. I was right back where I started. So I hunkered down and I studied the body. It was still warm. Warm chicken. My mouth began to water. I noticed a rumble in my stomach. This fresh evidence was pointing the case in an entirely new direction. Drover, why don't you run on and get some sleep? You had a tough day. Oh, I'm wide awake now. You look sleepy. I do? Yes, you do. Awful sleepy. Your eyes seem kind of baggy. Don't you think we should sound the alarm? Well, not just yet. I need to do a little more study on the corpse. My stomach growled real loud. Drover perked up his ears. What was that? I didn't hear anything. He waited and listened. I concentrated on making my stomach shut up. You can do that, control your body with your mind, only it didn't work this time. My stomach growled again. Sounded like a rusty gate hinge. What is that? Drover asked. Rigor mortis. Chickens do that. Run along now, get some sleep. We got a big day ahead of us. Well, okay. So he started off and he heard my stomach again. He turned around, twisted his head. Was that you? Don't be absurd. Good night, Drover. So what do you think Hank is up to? So his stomach's growling. He said warm chicken. He's got to study the corpse a little bit better. Sounds a little suspicious, a little fishy to me. Like that Hank might be about to do something that he maybe shouldn't do. So he shrugged and went on down to the gas tanks, and I gave him plenty of time to bed down and get comfortable and snapped at a few mosquitoes and fall asleep. My mouth was watering so much that it was dripping off my chin. But everything was real quiet. I snatched up the body, loped out to the horse pasture, and I began my post-mortem investigation. It was very interesting. I didn't hurry this part of the investigation. I labored over my work for several hours and fell into a peaceful sleep. When I woke, it was bright daylight. I could feel the rays of the sun warming my coat. I glanced around, trying to remember where I was, and when I figured it out, my heart almost stopped beating. I was lying in the center of a circle of white feathers, and several more feathers were clinging to my mouth and nose. My belly bulged, and Sally Mae was standing over me with a look of horror on her face. Hank, you're the one? Oh, Hank, how could you? Huh? Wait, no, there's been a mistake. I had only, well, you see, and the chicken was already dead, and I thought, hey, listen, I can explain everything. Well, it must have looked pretty bad, me lying there in the midst of all that damaging evidence. Sally Mae headed down to the house, swinging her arms and walking fast. I didn't know what to do. If I ran, it would look bad. If I stayed, it would look bad. No matter what I did, it would look bad. Maybe eating the darn chicken had been a mistake. So see, he did do something he probably shouldn't have done. So he ate the dead chicken. I was still sitting there, mulling over my next course of action when Sally Mae returned with her husband. There! Look! You see who's been killing the chickens? Your dog! I whacked my tail against the ground and I put on my most innocent face. Loper and I had been through a lot together. Surely he would know that his head of ranch security wasn't a common chicken-killing dog. He had to trust me. But I could see his face harden, and I knew I was cooked. Hank, you bad dog. Never would have thought you'd do something like this. I didn't. It's all a mistake. I've been framed. Come here, Hank. So I crawled over to him. He picked up the chicken head, which was lying on the ground. I hadn't eaten it, that part, because I found that beaks are too hard to swallow. He tied a piece of that string around the head, and he tied it around my neck. There. You wear that chicken head until it falls off. Maybe that'll help you remember that killing hens doesn't pay around here. They left, talking in low voices and shaking their heads. I tried to bite the string and get that thing off my neck, but I couldn't do it. I was feeling mighty low and mighty blue. I was ashamed of myself, but I was also outraged at the injustice of it. I headed down to the corral to find Drover. Instead, I ran into Pete the barn cat. Just the guy I did not want to see. He was sunning himself in front of the saddle shed. In other words, loafing, which is what he does about 95% of the time. The mice were rampant down at the feed barn. Pete couldn't work a mouse patrol into his busy schedule. It interfered with his loafing. That's a cat for you. He saw me before I saw him. He yawned, and a big old grin came across his face. Nice necklace you have there, Hanky. Where could a feller buy one of those? You have to be in the mood for Pete, and I wasn't. I made a dive for him, and he escaped instant death by a matter of inches. He hissed and ran, and I fell in right behind him. I chased him around the corrals. He hissed and I barked. There were several horses in the west lot, and they all started bucking and kicking up their heels. It was my lousy luck that Slim happened to be riding one of them, a 2-year-old colt, as I recall, and he started yelling. Hey, get out of here! Whoa, Sinbad, easy, Bronco. Nobody around here ever yells at the cat. Why? I don't know. I just don't understand. I gave up on the chase. I would settle accounts with Pete some other day. I loped over to the gas tank, looking for Drover. He heard me coming, sat up, saw the chicken head around my neck, turned tail, and he sprinted for the machine shed as fast as he could go. Drover, wait, it's me, Hank. He kept on going. I guess he didn't want to get involved with a criminal. I went on down to the gas tank and I laid down. Boy, I felt low. I tried to sleep, but didn't have much luck. That chicken head was starting to smell. and it reminded me all over again of the injustice of my situation. Off in the distance, I could hear Pete. He was still up in the tree he had climbed to escape my attack, and he was singing a song called Mamas, Don't Let Your Puppies Grow Up to Be Cow Dogs. Now and then he would stop singing, and I would hear him laughing. He really got under my skin. I lay there brooding for a long time. Then I pushed myself up, and all of a sudden it became clear what I would have to do. They had left me no choice. I took one last look at my bedroom, there under the gas tank, started up the hill. And as I passed the machine shed door, Drover stuck his head out. Psst! Where you going, Hank? I'm leaving. He crept out, glanced around to see if anybody else was watching, and he came after me. Leaving? That's right. I quit. I resign. His jaw dropped. You can't do that. You just watch me. This chicken head was the last straw. I'm fed up with this place. I'm moving on. Moving? Where you going? I don't know yet. West, toward the setting sun. He was quiet for a minute then. Well, I'll go with you. No, you won't. Well, how come? Because, Drover, I'm starting a new life. I'm going to become an outlaw. The breath whistled through his throat. An outlaw? That's right. They've driven me to it. I tried to run this ranch, but it just didn't work. I'm going back to the wild. One of these days, they'll be sorry. But Hank, goodbye, Drover. Take care of things. I'm sorry it has to end this way. Next time we meet, I won't be Hank the cow dog. I'll be Hank the outlaw. So long. And with that, I trotted off to a new life as a criminal, outcast, nomad, and wild dog. So, Hank is upset. His owner, Loper, tied the dead chicken beak around his neck because they think, what? Sally Mae and Loper think that Hank is the one that's been killing the chickens. Well, it looks kind of bad, doesn't it? He ate the chicken. He's in the middle of the chicken feathers when Sally Mae finds him. So yes, it does not look very good for Hank. So Hank is upset. He thinks he's been unjustly punished. So he decides leave the ranch. He's going to become what? An outlaw. And what is an outlaw? An outlaw is someone who does not follow the rules and they get into trouble and they cause problems. Okay? So that's going to be interesting to see what kind of outlaw Hank becomes. This one was a pretty long chapter, so I won't read another one. Chapter 6, which is, we're getting to near the middle of the book, is called Buzzards. These are two characters that are two of my favorites. And like I said, they were introduced in this book, and they are throughout some of the other books. And they are very funny and two of my favorite characters in the Hank series. Okay? So I will see you tomorrow with Chapter 6. Oh, and let me remind you, this is a 4.5. It is worth 3 whole points, and the quiz number is 5222. Okay? All right. Night, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.